I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday and welcome to Norse Studies. We're going to be talking about Freya's necklace today. It is, of course, Brigantia, which is the famous necklace of Freya, gold and glittering. From the moment she laid her eyes upon it, she had to have it. It was almost as though a madness had overtaken her, and she was willing to do absolutely anything in order to get it. It was crafted by the dwarves. Some say that the dwarves deliberately created their forge where it would be within Freya's line of sight, knowing that she just would not be able to resist the beautiful necklace that they were making, and as a result, that they could ask anything that they wanted in exchange for it. Now, the negotiations began along customary lines. Freya offered gold, silver, other kinds of material treasures. But in the end, the only price that the dwarves would accept is if she spent a night with each one of them. There were 4 dwarves in all. They were brothers, and in the end, Freya agreed to pay their price. Now, on the surface, it would be easy enough to dismiss this story as a tale of putting too much value on material objects and too little on personal virtue. I mean, after all, at the time that this exchange was taking place, Freya was married to Odor. But things are never quite so simple in myths, are they? And the meaning that we can glean depends on the perspective and how deeply we go into the symbolism. The story has been subject to much debate as to what it means, and if we go further into it and we see what occurs after the necklace is stolen and then eventually returned, there is cause to believe that the story that we have received as it is has been distorted by Christian priests to better suit their purposes and their worldview. So, as usual, we are working with imperfect information, but let's explore a particular line of thought that's occurred to me and just see where it takes us. To begin with, let's consider who Freya is. We know she is from the Vanir tribe of gods, and she was the one who actually taught Odin the art of Seether, which is a specific form of magic in which one can foresee the future and can even pluck the strings of fate to bring about certain outcomes. She is the archetypal Volva, which means wand-wed, or a female practitioner of the magical arts who is essentially married to her craft. Now, after Freya acquires Brigantia, it becomes known how it came into her possession by everyone. Her husband, as a result, wandered off, and Freya was often searching for him. She was crying tears of amber along the way. Her marriage to Odor at this point was functionally over, and what she had left was the necklace. This raises the possibility that Brigantia represents magical power, or the desire to hold on to it, or the need for some people to harness that within themselves and then wield it. As the story goes, Freya became overwhelmed with the desire to have the necklace, so much so that she actually said in the text that life would not be worth living without it. Freya had no shortage of wealth or of jewelry, so even the finest of jewelry pieces would have been commonplace for her if they were just jewelry. So, what made Brigantia different? At this point, I haven't come across any suggestion that Brigantia was magical in and of itself. And if your own research has indicated otherwise, please let me know in the comments. But the question that remains is, why did Brigantia mean more to Freya than just, another pretty necklace, which she could have gotten anywhere from anyone without having to spend the night with anyone in order to get it? Now, as I mentioned, it was 4 dwarf brothers who made it, and 4 is quite a significant number. We have 4 seasons, 4 directions, 4 elements, and they also described the dwarves. They described Brigantia as the morning star, the rainbow, the moon, and the fruitfulness of the earth. Now, the morning star is likely a reference to the planet Venus, which is often called the morning star. And of course, that planet and its association with goddesses of love, it is also associated with the goddess Freya by extension. And then the rainbow, in the context of Norse spirituality, that puts us in mind of the Bifrost and the bridge to Asgard. The moon and its magical tides have long been associated with magic and witchcraft. And as for the fruitfulness of the earth and the fertility of the land, well, that's one of the core objectives to achieve in magical workings, to aid in the continuance of all things that makes life possible. Now, all of these characteristics are quite specific to Freya herself. In a way, we could say that Brigantia is the ultimate representation of Freya. In part, this can explain why she couldn't resist it, because everything that it is also her. To deny it would be the same as denying her own being. Another factor that occupies my mind is the insistence of the four dwarves that Freya lie with them each in turn, and how each of these four dwarves are linked with the four elements of earth, air, fire, and water, and that this act and this exchange was presented in the form of a marriage to last a day and a night, in which Freya would give of herself freely. Now, if we look at the dwarves as representing the four creative energies that compose the universe, then the situation takes on a bit of a different complexion. It isn't this tacky quid pro quo, but rather it is an act of magical binding. Now, in actual marriage, the couple voluntarily binds themselves to each other, and in this tale of Brinksaman, Freya is voluntarily binding herself to each of the brothers. And if they do indeed represent the four elements, then she was essentially binding herself to those creative, magical powers of the universe, making Brinksman a symbol of that union and a precursor of the idea of being wand wed or wedded to magic and the practice of the craft. Now, gaining Brinksman did bring challenges and difficulties and loneliness to Freya's life, as the lore goes on to tell us. And any modern day magical practitioner of any tradition or non tradition can readily confirm that learning to use those kinds of talents, it doesn't make your problems go away. It can complicate your life, and sometimes it is a very lonely road to walk. Now, while many practitioners can and they do marry, and many of them have families, there is sometimes a sense of being torn in two, the act of balancing marriage and family responsibilities against your magical practice and your drive to do it. Now, even though it does get easier over time and your life does become more integrated, there are still times when the obligations of marriage and family and a person's magic do come into conflict. Now, if this interpretation of the Brinksman holds water, then it serves as more than well, it's more of a cautionary tale, really, for the people who do have pronounced magical gifts, because to one degree or another, all humans do have some magical capacity. But, clearly that ability is not distributed equally, just as other talents we might have aren't distributed equally. But there are some people who have enough of that gift that they feel driven to pursue those talents, just as Freya was driven to possess Brinksaman. For those whom magic is intrinsic to who they are and what their purpose is in life, there will come a time when they are seized by the need to develop that gift, and they will be prepared to endure a great deal to do so. For those in that situation, this story is a warning that you need to go into that journey with your eyes open and accept just how much this will impact and change you, and that there will be a cost to it. Now, thankfully, none of us today are being called upon to surrender our bodies to four elemental dwarves, as Freya was, in order to become fully realized practitioners. But the path does require that we recognize and learn how to employ those energies within ourselves and then in our environments, both mundanely and magically. And in that way, we are just as wedded to those elemental energies as Freya was for a time to gain Brinksaman. Of course, this is just one way amongst many to look at the story, and I certainly don't claim that my thoughts on the topic are the end all be all. But it's worth looking at these stories a little less literally and much more metaphorically, and just see where that road really takes our thoughts. I've gained some fairly useful insights in that process, and hopefully it will be just as useful to others. But I would love to hear about your own ideas about this story and what you think it means and how you arrived at your own conclusions. So let me know all about that in the comments, or come to Blackbird's Brew on Gilded and share your thoughts there. There's a link to join us in the description box, and hopefully we'll see you there very soon. But that will do it for now, and I will see you next time. Bye.